Europe, a continent full of culture, history, and breathtaking views. But what if I told you that not every European country offers a great life? Would you believe me? Think Europe is all about charming cafes, smooth-running public transport, and high living standards? Think again. For years, I dreamed of living in Europe. The cobblestone streets, beautiful cafes, and thriving cities, it seemed like the perfect escape. But after meeting people who had moved across Europe, I learned a hard truth. Not all countries in Europe are as dreamy as they appear. A friend of mine packed up everything to move to one country and quickly discovered the bitter reality of skyrocketing rent, poor job opportunities, and safety issues that nobody warned her about. It got me thinking, what are the worst countries to live in Europe, and why? In this video, I'm diving deep into real data, honest experiences, and eye-opening statistics to reveal the top 10 worst European countries to live in. I'm not here to sugarcoat things. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which places to avoid and why. Yes, Switzerland and Denmark might rank among the world's best places to live, but Europe faces plenty of challenges. I looked at data from the World Bank, WHO, and various expat surveys to find the worst country in Europe to live in, along with 9 others that might surprise you. My research covered everything from healthcare and safety to job opportunities and living costs. So, stay with me, because you won't believe some of the countries that made this list. Number 10. Belarus. Struggling with development and opportunities. Belarus stands out as one of the worst European countries to live in. My analysis of many European nations shows the situation there is deeply worrying. The cost of living might look appealing at first. It's 1.94 times cheaper than the world average. But this advantage comes with serious drawbacks. People take home just $483 per month after taxes, which barely covers simple monthly expenses. Utilities, $41.27 for a 700 square 50 apartment. Food costs, basic meal with drink, $8. Housing, downtown one-bedroom apartment, $63. The country's political situation raises red flags. Human rights violations are systemic, with over 400 political prisoners behind bars. The situation gets worse as authorities torture detainees and treat them inhumanely. Political prisoners face the harshest conditions. Belarus's healthcare system tells a complex story. The country has 609 inpatient facilities that offer universal access, but real problems exist. The system uses 4.6% of GDP and faces major challenges. Medical staff shortages despite having 46.4 doctors per 10,000 people. Patients must make unofficial payments. Specialized treatments are hard to access. The system follows strict hierarchical rules. Life gets harder as authorities target independent media, civil society groups, and citizens who speak up. These factors make Belarus one of Europe's toughest places to live, especially if you value freedom and democratic rights. Number 9. Moldova, Europe's poorest country. Moldova, located between Romania and Ukraine, is often cited as one of Europe's least developed countries. The primary issue here is the economy. Despite efforts to modernize, Moldova's GDP remains one of the lowest in Europe, with significant poverty levels and limited opportunities for job growth. Moldova stands out as one of Europe's most challenging places to live, with troubling indicators. My research reveals simple yet disturbing facts about this Eastern European nation's living standards. Moldova's economic reality paints a grim picture. The absolute poverty rate reaches 24.5%, and rural areas face a staggering 32.8% poverty rate, compared to 11.9% in urban regions. The numbers tell a stark story. Women bear a higher poverty risk, 26.3%, than men, 23.6%. Households with 3 or more children show 36.9% poverty rate. 60% of the population lives in energy poverty. GDP per capita reaches only 29% of the EU average. Moldova's infrastructure problems run deep. The country's transportation system barely functions, with only 30% of roads in good condition. The situation becomes more dire with these facts. The railway network has crumbled, leaving only 10% of trains operational. Energy infrastructure suffers 18.8% transmission losses. Rural residents struggle daily. Only 67% have access to clean water, compared to 92% in urban areas. Moldova's security situation raises red flags that make it one of Europe's toughest places to live. The Ukraine conflict next door has created unprecedented challenges. The reality on the ground shows Russia's invasion of Ukraine has created serious security risks, as projectiles have passed through Moldovan airspace. The breakaway region of Transnistria adds more complexity to an already unstable situation. The country's vulnerability to adverse weather events and energy shocks makes things worse. Moldova imports 98% of its energy needs, placing it among the most vulnerable countries for short-term energy security. Number 8. Ukraine. A nation in crisis. Even before recent events, Ukraine faced serious challenges. The conflict, coupled with corruption and poor governance, has left Ukraine's economy in a fragile state. High inflation, unemployment, and a devalued currency make daily life increasingly difficult for citizens. Ukraine has become one of Europe's most challenging places to live. The ongoing conflict disrupts every aspect of society and creates devastating effects. Recent data reveals an increasingly dire situation as the country faces unprecedented humanitarian and economic challenges. Latest reports show civilian casualties have reached alarming levels, with 29,731 civilian casualties recorded between February 2024 and January 2024. The destruction is staggering. Critical infrastructure has taken the heaviest toll. 3,790 educational facilities damaged or destroyed. Over 47,000 incidents of armed clashes and attacks in 2023. 1,000 plus verified attacks on healthcare facilities. Safety concerns now reach way beyond the immediate conflict zones. The situation has become especially serious, with 14.6 million people needing humanitarian assistance. Children and elderly face the greatest risks. Seniors make up 32% of civilian casualties, despite representing only 25% of the population. The economic effects have been catastrophic. Reconstruction needs paint a sobering picture. The total cost of reconstruction and recovery will reach an estimated $486 billion over the next decade. Several immediate challenges stand out. GDP declined by 30 to 35% in the first year of conflict. Poverty increased from 5.5% to 24.2% of the population, 15 billion needed for immediate reconstruction priorities in 2025. The massive displacement makes everything harder, with 3.7 million people internally displaced and another 5.9 million seeking refuge abroad. This humanitarian crisis creates unprecedented challenges in urban and rural areas alike. 1 in 3 Ukrainian households now faces food insecurity. However, Ukraine's cultural heritage, rich traditions, and resilient spirit continue to inspire hope for better days. Number 7. North Macedonia. A country facing economic hurdles and emigration. North Macedonia, a small Balkan country rich in history and culture, struggles with economic stagnation, political challenges, and widespread emigration. My deep dive into North Macedonia paints a picture of a nation caught in a web of challenges that make it one of Europe's struggling countries. The nation stays peaceful unlike some neighbors, but economic and social problems substantially affect daily life. The data shows living standards under heavy pressure, with nominal wage growth reaching 14.8% in June 2024. Climate change could damage the economy by up to 4% of GDP by 2050. Several challenges make the situation worse. Families with 5+ members face high poverty rates, 48.5% of population. The country needs $6.40 billion in infrastructure investments over next decade. Some ethnic Albanian majority areas see electricity theft rates of 56-96%. The shadow economy amounts to $2.5 billion, chapters to 21-40% of GDP. The job market struggles paint a concerning picture. Unemployment sits at 12.5%, and youth unemployment has reached 26.9%. The sort of thing I love to point out is the unusual productivity gap. Large companies are 3% less productive than medium-sized ones, and 14% less productive than small firms. The healthcare system shows a mix of progress and problems. Recent reforms let GPs prescribe medicines for diseases without specialist referral. But major hurdles remain. Healthcare costs create serious access problems for 32.9% of people. 3% of people call informal payments a serious barrier to care. Rural healthcare access remains poor, with 70% of people living far from the nearest health center. Economic vulnerabilities, job market problems, and limited healthcare access make North Macedonia one of Europe's tougher places to live. Number 6. Albania, a nation facing economic and social struggles. Albania, situated in the Balkans, is a country of natural beauty, with pristine beaches, rugged mountains, and a rich cultural heritage. However, beneath the picturesque landscape lie significant economic and social challenges that impact the quality of life for its citizens. My deep dive into Albania's current situation reveals patterns that make it one of Europe's toughest countries to live in. Life is hard for residents because of problems with healthcare, safety, and weak infrastructure. Albania's economic reality creates daily struggles for its people. The poverty rate stands at 20%, making it the poorest country in the region. Older people and minorities face the toughest challenges. Rural areas struggle with few economic opportunities and poor infrastructure. Albania's healthcare system shows a troubling mix of corruption and poor service. The system remains mostly public, with these key problems. Per capita healthcare spending, only $275, 2018. Public clinics, 413 facilities nationwide, public hospitals, 42 facilities. Private sector growth, 18 private hospitals. By 2022, the sort of thing I love to highlight is how deep corruption runs in healthcare. 71% of citizens report giving bribes to doctors, and 47% have bribed nurses. Rural areas suffer even more because healthcare facilities are hard to reach. Safety issues make Albania one of Europe's more challenging places to live. Police struggle to protect and help residents, especially in remote areas. Several issues stand out. Drug networks and organized crime create targeted violence across the country. Even small traffic disputes can turn dangerous quickly because some drivers might be armed. Adding to these problems, unexploded landmines still exist in remote areas near hill towns on Kosovo's northern border. These challenges, from corrupt healthcare to safety risks, make daily life tough. The black market economy and constant corruption slow down progress. Albania ranks 98th out of 180 countries in the 2023 Corruption Perception Index. Number 5. Kosovo, a nation stuck in political gridlock. Kosovo's still finding its feet as a young country. High unemployment, political tensions, and limited international recognition make it a tough place to build a life. My extensive research into Kosovo's development path shows it's one of Europe's toughest places to live. Europe's youngest nation faces unique obstacles that make everyday life especially hard for its residents. Kosovo's economic reality paints a grim picture. The country has Europe's second poorest citizens and doesn't deal very well with devastating unemployment rates. The numbers tell a troubling story. Overall unemployment, 33% of the population. Youth unemployment, nearly 60% among young people. Poverty rate, 45% live below the poverty line. Extreme poverty, 15% of the population. Kosovo's infrastructure shows critical gaps that affect people's quality of life. The country lacks resilient infrastructure in transport, energy, and telecommunications. Water and sanitation services work well in big cities, but rural areas face major problems. Kosovo's journey toward European integration shows mixed results. The country signed a Stabilization Association Agreement with the EU in 2016, yet unique challenges persist. The sort of thing I love to point out is that Kosovo needs between 40 to 200 years to catch up with EU member states' GDP levels. Administrative inefficiencies add another layer of complexity. Simple administrative structures exist but deliver poor quality services. The judicial system raises red flags with courts drowning in 4,193 pending cases. This creates huge problems for citizens who need to defend their rights or run businesses. Kosovo's transition makes everything harder. The country has shown some economic growth since independence, with a 50% increase in per capita income, but ground-level development issues remain. Diaspora remittances of $1.1 billion, 15% of GDP, help stabilize the economy but mask deeper structural problems that affect daily life. Number 4. Montenegro. My research into Montenegro's economy paints a troubling picture of a European nation that doesn't deal very well with its core challenges. The country's stunning coastline draws tourists, but locals face a much harsher reality. The living standards in Montenegro fall substantially below European averages. The poverty rate sits at 8.8%, and most poor people are either chronically unemployed or students. A family of 4 needs $1,856.5 monthly for simple expenses, which is especially concerning. Here's what living costs look like. Simple utilities cost $110 monthly. Internet has smooth connectivity only in cities. A couple spends down to 50 dirhams dining out. Housing costs have shot up since 2022. The job market shows some worrying patterns. While unemployment stands at 11.4%, the sort of thing I love to highlight is the gender gap. Women lag 14 percentage points behind men in workforce participation. The country could boost its GDP by 6 percentage points by closing this gap. Montenegro's healthcare system faces major hurdles. The country switched to a tax-funded health insurance system in 2022, but problems are systemic. People pay 39% of health costs out of pocket, and about 10% of households face catastrophic health expenses. The shortage of medical professionals in northern regions is particularly alarming. The data shows that all but one of these northern municipalities have no pediatricians. This creates serious problems for families with children. Medical professionals also give conflicting advice about vital services like vaccinations. These challenges, along with public debt that will likely reach 64.5% of GDP by 2026, make Montenegro one of Europe's tougher countries to live in. This affects families and people who need regular medical care the most. Number 3. Bosnia and Herzegovina, a struggle for stability. Bosnia and Herzegovina, known for its stunning landscapes and cultural diversity, remains one of Europe's most fragile states. Decades after the devastating Bosnian War, the country continues to face political gridlock, economic hardship, and widespread emigration. Bosnia and Herzegovina shows a nation that still bears the scars of its complex past. The country faces some of Europe's toughest living conditions. Political instability, poor infrastructure, and economic hardships create daily challenges for its residents. The cost of living might seem low at first glance, but reality tells a different story. A family of 4 spends between $300 to $400 monthly on groceries. The sort of thing I love is how this reflects broader issues. Almost half of young people want to leave due to poor quality of life. Here's what people typically spend. Monthly rent, $250 to $400 for one-bedroom apartment. Utilities, $100 to $150 monthly. Transportation, $25 to $30 for monthly passes. The political situation remains a major obstacle to progress. Young people see deep-rooted problems. Over 70% believe corruption runs through the entire system. Ethnic tensions and policy changes make governance even more complex. Bosnia's infrastructure shows serious shortcomings that affect everyday life. The country has only 220 kilometers of usable highways. The main road network spans just 8,501 kilometers of trunk and regional roads. Natural disasters pose a serious threat. Floods in 2014 caused $286 million in road repair costs. Economic vulnerability adds another layer of difficulty. 40% of people can't save money or handle basic expenses beyond a month if they lose their main income. Employment numbers tell a grim story. Only 48% of people work, with women's participation at a mere 37%. The talent exodus makes these problems worse. Almost half of young citizens plan to leave because they don't deal very well with poor socioeconomic conditions, high unemployment, and subpar public services. Number 2. Bulgaria. It boasts stunning mountain ranges, picturesque Black Sea beaches. My research about European nations shows that Bulgaria stands out as a complex case. The country joined the EU in 2007, but still faces big challenges that affect the quality of life for locals and expatriates alike. The average monthly salary here is among the lowest in the European Union, often falling short of covering basic living expenses. Western European capitals. A fancy dinner there might cost more than what some Bulgarians make in a week. So, despite being part of the EU, Bulgaria has one of the highest levels of corruption in Europe. Public services often suffer, and the justice system struggles to win the confidence of its citizens. As a result, a significant number of young people are leaving Bulgaria in search of better opportunities elsewhere. Several critical hurdles make life difficult for expatriates in Bulgaria. The language barrier creates real problems because Bulgarian uses the Cyrillic alphabet. This makes simple communication a challenge. The sort of thing I love to point out is that without speaking the language, people can only find low-paid jobs. The digital world adds another layer of complexity. Everything from immigration processes to doctor registration needs complex procedures and local help. Bulgaria might seem cheap at first glance, but reality tells a different story. The country has one of the lowest costs of living in the EU. Here's what you can expect to pay monthly. Basic utilities: $200 for power, water, and heating. One-bedroom apartment rent: $372 to $620 in city centers. Weekly groceries: $60 for basic items. Bulgaria remains the poorest EU member state. The numbers show that it reaches only 64% of the EU's average GDP per capita. The minimum wage sits at about €260 monthly, which ranks among the lowest in the EU. Bulgaria's infrastructure problems are systemic. The road network raises serious concerns. More than 50% of the country's roads are worn out and dangerous. It's worth mentioning that 33% of asphalt thickness is missing on some newly built routes that EU money funded. A huge gap exists between cities and villages. Rural regions lag behind by a lot, and almost two-thirds of poor Bulgarians live in the countryside. Corruption makes things worse, especially in infrastructure projects. This leads to some of Europe's highest highway construction costs. This is a big deal, as it means that some projects cost more than 50 million BGN per kilometer. Number 1. Russia. Struggling with economic transition and political challenges. Russia faces unprecedented challenges due to international sanctions. These sanctions affect 70% of banking assets and have made it one of the hardest European countries to live in. The country's isolation affects every aspect of daily life. The political scene has grown more restrictive lately. The International Criminal Court's arrest warrants against President Putin have pushed the country further into isolation. The government's reaction to opposition raises serious concerns. New laws now make it illegal to help international organizations. This cuts off citizens from getting help from outside the country. Corruption, lack of transparency, and government inefficiency create distrust among the population. The living costs paint an interesting picture despite the sanctions. People spend $687 on average each month. Here's what typical expenses look like. Monthly rent for a furnished apartment in normal areas is $590 and up. Basic utilities: $82 monthly. Public transport pass, $19 monthly. Basic lunch menu, $5 or $30s. The numbers might look reasonable at first glance. The real problem lies in the average after-tax salary of just $600, which barely covers these monthly costs. People's satisfaction with their standard of living has fallen from 57% to 49%. Even more worrying, 34% of Russians can't afford enough food. Daily life gets harder because of mounting cultural challenges. The government tightens its grip on society and limits personal freedoms more each day. Russia scores lowest in personal freedom among all prosperity indicators. This shows how much the government restricts individual expression and lifestyle choices. The surge in xenophobic attacks and anti-migrant sentiment causes alarm. Police often target non-Slav migrants and ethnic minorities with unnecessary ID checks and detentions. Moscow and St. Petersburg offer the best quality of life in the country. Yet these cities exist as isolated bubbles that don't reflect the harsh reality across this big nation. Political pressure, money problems, and cultural restrictions create a tough environment. Basic freedoms keep shrinking. This makes Russia one of Europe's toughest countries for everyone, locals and foreigners alike. So there you have it, folks. Now my final thought. Europe's most troubled countries face shared challenges, including political repression, war-damaged infrastructure, energy issues, and poverty. Weak healthcare systems, corruption, and economic struggles affect millions daily. For instance, 71% of Albanians pay bribes for medical care. Moldova's poverty rate stands at 24.5%, and Kosovo's unemployment is 33%. Women, the elderly, and rural populations face even greater hardships. While progress is possible, these nations require significant reforms and investments to improve living standards. Understanding these challenges is crucial for anyone considering moving to, working in, or investing in these regions. Finally, have you ever wished of traveling the world and make money at the same time? Without ever creating your own products or websites? Then let me show you how to set up your own online business empire to make $300 to $500 a day, and how you can get started right now. Click the link below for more info. If you love this type of videos, please subscribe to our channel, like and share this video with your friends, then hit the notification bell, that way you won't miss any of our future videos. Thank you.